Look closely at the science fiction of the last 50 years. The sleek yet gritty starships of Hollywood, the sprawling industrial megacities of modern anime, the gritty realism of contemporary concept art. We treat this aesthetic as a given, but where did it actually come from? Before the mid-1970s, science fiction art was largely defined by fantastic but physically impossible pulp illusions. Rockets look like shiny toys. Alien worlds look like theatrical stages. The genre lacked architectural weight. It lacked gravity. Then, a group of artists in the 1970s changed that forever. Today, we'll talk about one of them. He asked a single question. What if the future didn't look like a comic book, but like an engineering blueprint come to life? This is the story of Jim Burns, a three-time Hugo Award winner, a master of photorealistic speculative painting, and the man who taught an entire generation how to look at tomorrow. Today, we break down his journey, his technique, and the exact design philosophies. To understand Jim Burns, we have to look past the label of illustrator. Burns was a visual world builder operating at a critical turning point in cultural history. In the 1970s, science fiction was evolving from disposable paperbacks into serious, high-concept literature. Writers like Asimov and Clarke needed artists who could match their intellectual rigor. In this deep dive, we are going to trace his path from a brief stint in the Royal Air Force to the peak of the global publishing world. We'll analyze his landmark work on projects like Mechanismo, his overlooked contributions to Ridley Scott's early visions of Blade Runner, and the specific techniques. Let's head back to where it all began. Born in Cardiff, Wales in 1948, Jim Burns did not initially set out to conquer the art world. In fact, his early adulthood was defined by a completely different pursuit of the skies. In 1966, he signed up for the Royal Air Force. Though his time in the RAF was short-lived, lasting only about a year, it laid the psychological foundation for his entire artistic philosophy. He was studying hydraulic lines, pneumatic seals, structural load-bearing frames, and the real-world weathering effects of wind shear and heat on metal. When he left the military to enroll at the Newport College of Art and later the St. Martin's School of Art, he carried this industrial literacy with him. While the art establishment of the late 60s and early 70s was pushing heavily toward abstract expressionism and conceptual art, Burns remained stubbornly, brilliantly dedicated to figurative realism. He probably realized that the human mind is incredibly adept at spotting fakes. If an artist draws a spaceship that makes no structural sense, the viewer immediately detaches from the story. But if you paint a starship with visible service hatches, logical thruster placement, and realistic hydraulic stains, the fantasy becomes an extension of reality. By the time he graduated in 1972, the publishing industry was ready for exactly this breakthrough. By the mid-1970s, Burns joined the legendary Young Artist Agency in London. This group was the epicenter of a massive British wave of science fiction art that would dominate global publishing. It was during this golden era that Burns contributed to a project that would define his signature style for a generation: Harry Harrison's Mechanismo. Look at the image we just saw from that era. Notice how Burns handles the human figures alongside the technology. This wasn't a cold, lifeless mechanical drawing. This was a lived-in future. The spacesuits have wrinkles where fabric actually bends under atmospheric pressure. This specific blend, marrying high-fidelity industrial design with classical, beautiful human figures, became the trademark Jim Burns style. It caught the eye of the biggest authors in the world. If you bought a paperback by Frank Herbert, Arthur C. Clarke, Robert Silverberg, or Isaac Asimov in Europe or America during this time, chances are Jim Burns painted the cover. With a reputation this formidable, it was only a matter of time before Hollywood called. And in 1980, that call came from one of the most visually ambitious directors in cinema history, Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott was in pre-production for a film called Blade Runner. He brought Jim Burns to Los Angeles to work as a concept artist for several weeks. Burns worked directly on designing the iconic industrial look of the city, the towering megaliths, and the ground vehicles. However, if you look at the end credits of Blade Runner, you'll see that the legendary Sid Mead is credited as a lead visual futurist. And you might wonder why Burns isn't mentioned. Well, it basically all comes down to a classic clash between artistic temperament and production deadlines. Burns was deeply accustomed to the solitary, absolute control of his studio in the UK. The chaotic, hyper-collaborative, and constantly shifting environment of a major Hollywood production studio felt discordant to his precise working method. He chose to return to England, leaving the production early. To truly appreciate why Jim Burns stands at the pinnacle of his craft, we must step away from what he painted and look closely at how he painted it. In an era before digital drawing pads, Photoshop layers, or AI prompt generation, everything you see in a Jim Burns piece was won by hand through pure mastery of traditional mediums. Burns' secret weapon was a complex, highly demanding combination of airbrushing and traditional hand brushing. He used acrylics and gouache via airbrush to create those flawless, perfectly smooth gradients on metallic spaceship hulls and alien skies. But he knew that pure airbrushing could look sterile. So over those perfect digital-looking gradients, he would paint using traditional oils with fine-tipped brushes. He layered texture, specular highlights, skin pores, clothing weave, and dirt over the mechanical surfaces. This hybrid technique gave his work an extraordinary depth. It was smooth where it needed to be high-tech, but tactile and organic where it needed to be human. This technical perfectionism earned him a staggering 3 Hugo Awards for Best Professional Artist, alongside 12 British Science Fiction Awards. He became the only non-American artist to consistently break through the US-dominated speculative art industry at that level, proving that true craftsmanship transcends borders. Jim Burns did something far more profound than just illustrating fantasy stories. He took the impossible and made it tangible. He looked out into the cold, distant expanse of the human future and chose to anchor it in real physics, real engineering, and real human emotion. Every time you play a sci-fi video game with weathered industrial designs or watch a modern space epic that feels real and gritty, you are walking through a door that Jim Burns helped paint open. If you are an artist, a designer, or simply a lover of great imagination, let Burns' dedication to craft be your inspiration. Don't just draw what's easy. Build the worlds you want to see with the weight of reality behind them.